And I would just like to point out, in that line item of supervisors and directors, we have 7 full-time supervisors and directors who are making sure that we are all in fact accountable. And I see that this year we have a $213,000 adjustment, and that $213,000 would go a long way to help make sure that AVID program stays at our middle schools, where the children have so adequately spoken about and really showed how important that program is. So I'll just throw that suggestion out there. I think that would be a great place for us to find some savings and make sure we keep the AVID program. I guess I want to look now at our general purpose position summary budget code sheet. I did a little research, and over in Nashville, they have 121 folks that are considered their central office folks. Now, just from what I've been able to tally up here under other salaries and wages, which includes managers, coordinators, and liaisons, and supervisors and directors, which includes assistant superintendents, chief human resource officer, executive directors, chief technology officer, chief operating officer, chief of security, and the chief accountability officer, which we've already talked about. You know, we're pushing that number, and I'm just wondering how a bigger system is able to manage on 121 folks, and we are not able to do the same. I've heard that several studies have said how lean our central office is. One piece of information I requested, and I'm still waiting for, was to take a look at which departments in our central office have suffered cuts and which have had additions, because although we may be lean, we still somehow have found the money. And I'll also say Nashville's org chart fits on one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, not this size of sheet of paper. We still have found money to add positions, which I talked about last time, like a director of planning and improvement. I think that we need to have a real heart-to-heart and get at what is best for our kids, because that's what I'm here for. And I don't know how many more folks that we need to bring in under agreements with the Broad Academy, which I have asked the law director's office to look into, that is not beneficial to our children. I don't even know if that agreement that we have with the Broad Academy is even something that falls under Tennessee code. I don't know if the law director could speak to that briefly. I don't know. He doesn't have it in front of him, I'm sure, but could you address that, Mr. Law Director?
I was asked to look at that Broad Academy agreement, which did not come before the board, which I thought under state law was required to come before the board. The board had a policy, though, that said the superintendent could unilaterally accept or approve any grant that's $50,000 or under. There's only one $50,000 grant that can be done that way, and that's from the State Board of Education. So my preliminary opinion, which I'll be putting in a memo to all the board, is that that this board is the only board that can accept a grant, period, end of story. It's got to come before you. Secondly, as I looked under that Broad Academy agreement, it had not been reviewed by the law director's office. We review, or are supposed to review, all memorandums of agreement, all agreements. There were some, and Dr. McIntyre signed the agreement. This board never, as I understand, never approved it or saw it, but there were provisions in that agreement, such as indemnity clauses, which are absolutely illegal, and nobody in the law department has ever approved a contract that has an indemnity provision in it. There were some other provisions in it, and I'll outline those in more detail, but that's my preliminary research that I had done based on the independent requests that both Ms. Bounds and Ms. Roundtree had made to me.
So, Mr. Law Director, are you saying that the school board policy that allows the superintendent to accept grants for less than $50,000 is inappropriate?
Yes.
And that was not reviewed by the law department when that policy, I'm sorry, I thought you looked at it. I'm sorry.
I'm coming to you. Do you have a question or?
I have a request, actually. I think, you know, since I've been on this board since November, I'm actually getting really tired of hearing the board and the law department go back and forth on what's been reviewed and what hasn't, and what's been signed and what hasn't, what's legal, what hasn't. So what I would suggest or request, and I don't know if I need to make a motion for this and we need to vote, but what I would like to see is from now on, anytime anything's sent to the law department, that the law department signs off on it. Because what's happening is, I was looking at all the different policies that we have, and like, there's nothing that's signed that says the law department's reviewed it or not. And so it's more of a he said, she said, and it's real easy to have a paper trail if we just have the law department say or stamp reviewed this date or approved this date. So that way we don't have to worry about it anymore or spend any more time doing, you know, paper trails of what happened when. And so I don't know if I need to make a motion on that, and I'm more than willing to, or what do we think about that?
Anything that we review, we stamp and say, reviewed by law department, and we initial it, or sign it and date it. Now, on the policy, that was done many years ago, these policies. There are a lot of problems with numerous of these policies. I don't know who reviewed them. I have no idea. I'm just asked to look at them as I see them, sitting cold, and that's what I'm doing. But generally, anything that comes in front of us, we make it a practice to note that we've reviewed it and then send it out to the entire board.
I think on that, gosh, what was that last one? The fitness for duty policy thing, there was nothing that, that said that it was reviewed or stamped, or whether or not, you know, the law department actually thought it was a good policy or not. Like, there was nothing, because I tried to search for it, and there was nothing that said that, that it was reviewed. And so, again, it's just like more of a, in my mind, more of a, I'm not saying that you did or you didn't, I'm just saying it's more of a he said, she said, so no one, you can't really find out. And so as a board, for me to make the best decisions, board member, I would just prefer to make sure that we do going forward, I guess.
I thought that Ms. Wilcox had been before the board several times on a GBRI policy and was talking about what was not proper in the first one and the one that she had proffered for review by you all. And so I thought that policy had been done. I mean, it was pretty clear that the law department had come before this board on that issue.
Okay. There's just, I don't remember seeing a stamp there, like you said, so I guess that's my thing, like if we can just make sure there's a stamp there with someone signing it, just moving forward, that would be helpful for me.
And I agree. I think that if there's any policy change or reviewing a policy, if this board's going to make any changes to it, it's totally up to this board. And we may render a legal opinion that this board doesn't like, in which case we wouldn't approve the legality of a policy, but all we can do is recommend to you. This board is totally can do whatever it pleases. So, you know, therein would lie the only glitch on that. But
can you not stamp it and say reviewed? You know, it was reviewed, and then write a little note on it, or you know, so we can follow that back.
We can do whatever this board wants. We will do whatever this board asks us to do.
I think that what will benefit this board is, you know, there may be a few members changing over in a year or two too that may want to go back and look at policies and see how everything happened. And if there isn't, if I don't know that, you know, it was reviewed or that you didn't think it was legal, then, and there wasn't any little note on it, then it's hard for me to determine what happened. Thank you.
Ms. Carson.
Thank you. I will say that in my experience of every agenda prep meeting that I sat in as a board chair over 3 different years, the law department was at every single one of those meetings, and one of the questions that was always asked is there anything in this policy that's being proposed that's problematic or not consistent with law? Do I wish now we had gotten them to sign it? Yeah. But I can tell you that that absolutely happened at every meeting, and I strongly support getting them stamped and signed at this point as long as it doesn't create a significant delay. But the whole purpose of having the law department at the agenda-setting meetings is to identify any problematic area. And I can't, in my 10 years' experience on this board, think of any single time that we approved a policy against what the law director recommended. Can't think of one. Now, there have been a number lately that they go back and say, oh, well, that's not legal. Well, you know what? When you're at the table with me and you don't tell me then, and I mean, that is the purpose of being at the table. So if there are concerns with the legality of any of our policies, I would ask the law department to look at those and then let us know so this board can deal with them. I can tell you that very frequently there have been lots more words and lots more things put in policies just to make sure that it meets the legal parameters that need to be represented in board policy. So I guess in another meeting when we choose to address that issue about how we go about setting policy, that can be addressed then. A question as this, for the law department, as you've reviewed these questions that you said Ms. Bounds and Ms. Roundtree brought to you on this issue, and you talked about there were indemnity clauses that you thought were, I'm trying to remember the word you used, not legal?
Indemnity clauses are not legal, that's correct, nor are they enforceable.
Okay. Did you bring that to the attention of the superintendent as soon as you noticed that?
I just noticed it because I just got a copy of it last week.
So did you bring it to his attention? I mean, I guess my thought is this. As the law department is our one representative that we're allowed to go to, anytime something comes to your attention that could be illegal, my expectation would be that you bring it to at least the director's attention as soon as you notice it so that we can be aware of it.
I'm trying to bring it to this board's attention as soon as I was able to get my brief done. It's been a long, torturous week with all of this going on. I finally was able to get the answer done. I just got it last week. I think Ms. Roundtree had asked for that document, and it took 2 weeks to get it. I was waiting on that, and I've reported to you, my client, the Board of Education. And this is my first chance to report it. It wasn't on the agenda, so I was asked a question, so consider it to now be reported to you.
So is it unrealistic of me to expect that when you notice something that may be illegal that this board is doing, to expect to be given an email that says, just to give you a heads up, or just be aware this is an area of concern, or it has to be that we, A, know about it and then ask you in a meeting?
No, not a bit, because the memo that I'm working on, trying to do my research so I could be accurate, to send a memo to every one of you board members, which will go out tomorrow. I just have not had time to get that memo finalized to go out to you. But this is the quickest I've been able to come up with.
And has that draft been distributed to anybody?
No, because it's my draft yet. It's still got to be looked at, figured out, get the grammatics in it right, just like any other memo that goes out or any letter.
The other thing you said is every grant, the only people who can accept a grant is this board. Is that correct?
That's what the statute says.
Okay. So as you do this, I would also like to see a copy of the grant for that literacy grant, because I don't remember ever approving that.
I don't know what the literacy grant is.
The $3.1 million that we keep debating on in the county, I've never seen a copy of the grant.
Well, if you haven't, I'm surprised.
Well, that's why I'm asking you if you could
I don't
please.
have it. If I can get it, if somebody will send it to me, I don't have it.
I don't either, and I don't know that it exists, but so I'm just asking that you.
With all due respect, I don't have the grant documents. You have them over here. I don't have those grant documents. I was submitted one grant document.
So you can't get that. You can't research that. Is that
I
correct?
can research it if somebody will get it for me, but I don't have the document.
Okay, thank you.
If you will get it to me, I'll be glad to research it.
Something I don't have.
I don't know that any document exists. It was called a grant. It was basically a gift from the mayor, is what it amounted to. And they called it a grant. And he certainly has right to, to to give it or not if he doesn't want to.
The mayor, I would just question whether the mayor has right to give anybody $3.1 million. It seems to me that's county commission's.
Well, I didn't mean that literally, personally, Ms. Carson. I'm saying that when he gets his budget approved, he has the right to do that. The only reason that I mentioned it was because you were arguing as to whether there was a piece of paper that existed. Dr. McIntyre, did you want to make a comment?
I did, Mr. McMillan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to address the broader critique that Mr. Roundtree is raising, we've had 3 or 4 different independent analyses and reviews of our central office. All of those have shown that relative to other school systems our size, an important part, relative to other school systems our size, we're very lean in our central office. And an important part of those analyses have been a methodology that ensures you're doing an apples-to-apples comparison of what the definition of central office is. So I guess I would ask if you have some information about Nashville and their school system, I guess I would ask what the methodology used was to define central office and if it's the same as the methodology that we use, because I would suspect that it's not. And I would further say that when we look at our central office department, we sent an analysis to the Board of Education not that long ago that showed in the last 5 years we've gone from about 230 central office positions to roughly 210 central office positions, and this proposed budget will further reduce that. And so when we talk about positions, we are at a net reduction of more than 20 positions over the last few years in our central office. And again, in a central office that has been looked at independently and seen to be, relative to other school districts, pretty lean. So we are an efficient organization. We're an organization that has a minimal central office for the 58,000 plus students that we serve in 90 different schools with some 8,000 employees. And that's been looked at by a variety of different organizations, including the News Sentinel, and they've all come to essentially the same conclusion, that we are a very lean central office organization.
Ms. Fugit.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. I think it's clear that there's disagreement on this board about the value of a whole lot of different things that we're doing, and I hate that we're spending a lot of time talking again tonight about line item reductions in the budget that we could have talked about and proposed earlier, and I guess you can make amendments to change that budget. But the reason I put my microphone down is to ask a question about how we want to, as a board, request things of our attorney. I typically have no idea that anyone has asked anything of our attorney till I show up here at a meeting, one board member asks a question, the law director's office is prepared with an answer, and I have no idea. If it's our attorney, I would like for the whole board to be notified when a board member requests something of the law director's office. As chair, you typically ask for things from the law director's office on behalf of the board, but I have never, in my 5 years on the board, had individual members go directly to a law director and ask for legal opinions on things that we did not discuss as a board first. So I'm just, if that's what we're going to do, I would just like to be notified when the law director's office is asked for a legal opinion, so I know about it, because it's my understanding, the law director represents the system, the county commission, the county mayor, and the Board of Education. And if a member, and we only function as a Board of Education when 9 of us ask for something. So if individual members ask, I would just like to be notified.
Ms. Bounds.
Yes, being that I was one of the ones that asked, I'll address that. Originally, let me go back, Tracy, to what you said. when I went to the National School Board Association, I was very impressed in one conference I went to where their board actually spends the first part of their meeting each month looking at their board policies, making sure they're in compliance, making sure they're still necessary, deleting ones they don't need. So after we get through the budget, after we get through the balanced calendar, I hope to address that and bring a motion or whatever before this board that we begin to go through that board policy book. When I originally, the committee was formed to look at the superintendent's evaluation protocol, I just had a question as to, because I believe Ms. Carson had raised the issue that anything that was done before the board or anything that was voted on had to be approved by Dr. McIntyre. And in reading the Tennessee Code annotated, I asked the law director to rule on that, and as soon as they formed their opinion, I believe they sent that out to the entire board. So everybody received, or should have received, that information as how the Tennessee Code annotated aligned with our board policy. And given the fact that I was concerned about the Achieve grant and heard it at the state of the schools, and then it began to be implemented, and I heard the Teacher Advisory Council speak on it the other week, and it had never come before this board, I had a question as to why it had never come before the board. But that was just recently, and they probably have not had time to look through the law in regard to that. But so I think just in what I have found since I've been on the board a little bit longer than Tracy, is some of these policies in the past do not align with our Tennessee Code annotated as far as what I can see and read. So perhaps in regard to that, then we're kind of way off the budget tonight,
Yes,
by the way. But in regard to that, since it's been addressed by so many people on this board, I think this board needs to take a look at that board policy manual and go through a section of it each month and look at it and see how it aligns with state law.
Ms. Bounds, if I could answer that. I mean, we historically look every meeting. There are board policies on here because we systematically every year go through all the board policies. We haven't gone through the board policy, as you're suggesting, to say, make sure the law director reviews every policy we have and make sure that it aligns with Tennessee law. And I think that's a very good idea because the legislature keeps changing the law, and what we thought might have been fine maybe now isn't fine. My issue was not asking the law director a question. My issue was that when someone asks the law director a question, even before we get the answer, I would like to know that the question is being asked, since he represents all of us.
Ms. Dethridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess Ms. Fugit answer some of that because we do go through the board policy, and every time we go through the board policy, we make sure it aligns, and I think the administration does a good job of checking to make sure that we are updated according to what is coming out of Nashville. We make sure that everything is legal. I don't know how many policies we have that's not legal and in compliance with what's going on in Nashville. I'm surprised that I would be very surprised that we have that many policies that are not in line with what's going on in Nashville and not legal. But it'd be interesting to see. Also, as far as the Broad Academy, it keeps coming up. Broad Academy or whatever, Broad Academy keeps coming up. But somebody explained to me, we have had about 4 or 5 Broad scholars or fellows, right? Will you explain to me who they were, what they did, and where they are? Because it seems like we're having a problem with this, and I don't know what the problem is.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Dethridge. Mr. Chairman, the Broad Residency Program is a program of the Broad Foundation that supports individuals who have either law degrees or MBAs and trains them to be a help and support in public school systems. And what they bring is typically tremendous analytical capacity, project management capacity, and ability to bring a particular, I think, set of skills that is sometimes lacking in public school systems that they can bring to the table. We've had 4 different folks who have come to us through the Broad Residency Program. Janae Harley, who's our Director of Federal Programs. We've had Krista Tibbs, who is in our Accountability Department. We've had Nakia Towns, who was our Chief Accountability Officer, is now Assistant Commissioner for Education for the state of Tennessee, and Christy Hendler, who is currently in the position of Supervisor for Planning and Improvement. And again, I think one of the attractive aspects of the program is that the Broad Residency Program provides professional development and support to the residents while they're here, and in addition, they pay for part of their salary, which makes them a resource that comes at a low cost.
And if we have a vacant position such as Janae Hartley, I remember the manager or supervisor at the time retired, and she was a good candidate for the position, and we moved her in that position. So we have benefited from
Yes, ma'am.
these positions, and some have moved on and doing well, so I'm trying to figure out what is the problem. Is there a problem with us utilizing the fellowship program? Seems you have a problem. Could you explain it to me, please?
Sure. As I stated earlier, I believe we should be mindful that grants do come with strings, and I'll just read a little bit from a Washington Post article, which I believe I referenced at our last meeting. The Broad Foundation is a California-based foundation built on the housing and insurance empire of billionaire Eli Broad, has made, quote, transforming K-12 urban public education a major priority. Its training and placement of top administrators in urban districts across the country and support for charter schools, school turnarounds, merit pay, and other market-based reforms have put it at the center of a polarized national debate about education policy. And they have a memo that was sent out, and they placed their fellows to support their goals. And those goals, I do not believe, match what the goals that we have of our school system. They call them, quote, reform-ready locations, and these are some of their goals, if I can get to it. Basically, their goal is to try and privatize public education, and their goals are, as was mentioned, merit pay, turnaround. They look for leaders that are, quote, disruptive to lead them. I'd be glad to send the article. I think that I discussed a lot of the reforms that they were interested in last time, but, I believe that I personally want to do what's best for the kids in Knox County and for my constituents. I don't want to listen to what a billionaire in California is telling us to do.
Ms. Roundtree.
Mr. Chairman,
I know that there are people that want to speak to this, but and we'll do that. But keep in mind, we are here to discuss the budget, and I guess my question: do you intend to make a motion at some point, or we have a motion on the floor? Do you intend to amend that, make a substitute motion at some point, or are you just going through pointing out things that you have a problem with?
When I get to the end, I think I will be making a motion that we delay.
Well, I'm thinking seriously about taking a break here in the next few minutes. Do you anticipate how much longer your comments are going to be?
I think I can finish my comments pretty quickly. I think other people will probably have more things to chime in, it looks like.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address,
I'll come back
the
to
question. I'd like to address the statement that was
I was coming to
Ms.
you.
Roundtree made as well.
I'm Dr. McIntyre, but I wanted to find out about that first.
Thank you.
Dr. McIntyre.
Thank you. And again, I just bring a different perspective. The Broad residents who come to work for the Knox County Schools are selected based on their skill set and their ability to help us forward our agenda. And that agenda is excellence for every child. It is the strategic plan that's been adopted by the Knox County Board of Education. That's their agenda. That's their charge. That is their directive when they come work for us.
Ms. Carson?
Thank you, and I would just like to say, I've met with Christy Hendler. Have any of you all? I think that I have not heard from her any agenda about charter schools, promoting charter schools. I've yet to see a memo or recommendation that we convert to charter schools. I have seen a fair amount of turning around schools and reform ready, and I think that this board has historically made commitments to take those schools so that we don't have 4 schools in the county who are in the lower 5% of the entire county and turn them around. And if that's not what's best for kids, then we're aiming at it all wrong, because I don't think it's good for any kid to be in a school that's in the lower 5% of the state of Tennessee, much less when you compare it to the United States and where Tennessee has been historically for many years. I think part of being reform ready is changing your school systems so that you are no longer ranked 47th, 48 in the country, and you move up into the 30s, and it's a painful process. But if we did not have, and I have said this publicly many times, we have for years had a standard in Tennessee supported by TCAPs that said 90% of our 3rd graders were reading at proficient or above grade level throughout this state, until the business community said, wait a minute, because what we're getting, that's not true. And I know that there were teachers everywhere who knew, as they do now, which kids can read and which kids can't. But there was not any educational group that blew the whistle and said, this is crazy. You're giving me tests that tell me that these kids are proficient, and I know that they're not. Somebody had to blow the whistle, say, stop, this is not what we need to do for our kids. I think that came from the chambers, that came from the business community, that came from our colleges who realized how many kids that actually went to college started out in remediation. So I think that if we're not reform ready, we certainly should be, and I don't mind being identified as a school system that is reform ready. I have not seen any proposals from anybody, certainly not from me, advocating that we change to charter schools. This system has not been inundated with applications for charter schools, and until very recently had not approved the charter schools, except for one that we felt very much under duress and put in some components that made it very difficult to not meet the needs of the kids. And I will say the merit pay push came from the Race to the Top grant, where everybody signed on. And I think a lot of people signed on to that, and they signed on based on not necessarily having complete knowledge. And I think as the realities of the ties to those dollars that came to us hit, you saw some changes in it, in the enthusiasm for it. There's good and bad, and I think every grant comes with strings. Everybody's aware of it. But I look at the 2 people who still exist in this system, and from this Broad, and actually I think Christy's still under the residency program, right? You know, in my talks with her, she's talked about accountability for administration levels and how to hold them accountable, and it's exactly what we need. I do not believe, and said many times, that schools need to be run like a business. They're very different. But there are absolutely business principles that need to be employed and used by our schools, and if we continue to refuse to do it, we will continue to fail our kids.
Ms. Roundtree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out, I have not met with Ms. Hendler. I'm sure she's a fine person. I was not talking specifically about people, rather positions. Mr. Chair, do you want me to continue with my questions, or are we going to take a break?
Continue.
Okay. I would just like to ask the superintendent if you could tell me when the last study or return on investment study was done on the central office and which year. I know it was sent to us. I can't remember off the top of my head.
So we just did a report that looked at where we are in the current fiscal year versus where we were 5 years ago. That was just a couple weeks ago.
No, I mean by an outside group. That's what I was referring to.
I'd have to go back and look. There are, as I said, I think 3 or 4 different perspectives on that, all within the last 3 or 4 years.
So within the last 3 or 4 years. So it is indeed possible that while 20 positions have been cut from our central office, that positions have been added in other departments. I know that we had a discussion about cuts that had been to finance, and yet we're adding other positions. I think that really is the heart of the issue and my concern.
But the 210 positions is a net overall number. That's the total number of positions, and it's still a net reduction of over 20 positions over the last few years.
Yes, and I understand some of those positions are due to retirements, and there are departments that are now functioning without supervisors, and we are adding, we have additional positions that aren't necessary, in my opinion. I just want to look at really quickly the fund balance appropriations, which was sent to this entire board, I believe. And from my tally, it looks like, I guess we've spent over $24 million out of our fund balance account. And I'm just, I feel like that has partially put us in the position we're in today, where we're seeing programs like AVID being cut, hearing about the rifts at schools, and a concerning trend that when rifts are happening, they're happening from the related arts area. And I believe that those areas, related arts, be it music, art, library, whatever the related arts are, I think they have an equal place within our school system, and they're beneficial to all our children. So I would like to see us work toward keeping those programs. I think those are where some of our students really thrive, and what gets them to school each and every single day. So I think that we need to really look closely at those. And let's see my notes here. Sorry, I have a lot of papers. I would just like to say again that I support our teachers. They work tirelessly toward our goal of excellence for every child, and I want to thank them for their work that isn't defined by an evaluation score, but by the lives that they're changing each and every day. And so with that charge, I would love to hear some other suggestions of how we can get to that 4%. And if I could ask Mr. McPherson, just what would be the dollar amount needed to get to that 4%?
To add another 1% would equate to roughly $2.5 million.
And is there any way, I know one of the speakers mentioned just looking at the cost to solely provide our raise to our certified teachers who are teaching in a classroom setting. I don't know if that's something you would know, or
Mr. McPherson.
I want to make sure I understand the question. So with respect, in other words, out of that $2.5 million, how much of that would relate to strictly regular classroom teachers?
Yes, I'm just curious what the dollar amount would be if we were just to give a raise to our classroom teachers versus folks that are working in other capacities above and beyond classroom teachers.
Yeah, I hate to guess. I don't want to do that. I will say that I think it is safe to say that probably 80% or better of that $2.5 million would relate to teacher salaries.
Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I think that's it for me, for my questions, at least for right now. If anybody has anything to add.
We have a motion. Did you wish to make some kind of a motion or substitute?
I do. Can I I thought we were going to take a break, and I was going to make.
Well,
sure I wrote it
let's try this and see, and then we'll take a break. We have a motion on the floor.
down. Okay.
Make whatever your substitute motion is, and we'll see.
Okay. What?
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Did you ask for a break, or did you just say that you thought we were going to take a break?
I thought we were going to take a break, and then I was going to make sure I had it written.
Do you
written up.
wish to have a break then?
Yes, I would like to have a break to make sure it's written up
Hey.
correctly.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you take a break while, in the middle of a motion?
Right, I object.
I don't think we can. But while she's writing it, I can say something while she's writing, if you want to do
Well, you can
that.
take a break, I believe.
That's not what we heard in the last special call meeting.
No, if somebody makes a motion that they would like to recess for whatever time, then this body votes on whether that motion should be granted. If this body votes not to grant it, then it's not granted.
Okay, we'll
Can I make a motion to take a brief recess?
vote. All those in favor
Is there a
of,
second?
Oh, I second.
okay. All those in favor of
Aye.
taking a break signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
No.
the ayes have it.
What? I challenge that.
Okay.
Call a right,
All right,
I asked for a roll call.
all right,
again.
we'll have a roll call then.
Oh, my God.
I mean, really.
That's what you,
That's ridiculous.
Ms. Dethridge?